Good morning. We're going to go ahead and call to order the emergency meeting for the County Commission for Wednesday, June 3rd, 2020.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. The first item on your agenda is public comment. Just as a reminder, we do have phone available as well as email comments. At this point in time, I do not have any email comments, and I do not have any comments from folks on the phone.
Okay, and so I want to kind of explain the process for everyone. This is an ordinance that we actually started working on in late February, early March, but what had happened, COVID-19 came and we lost track of it. The language that is submitted today is language that we have in all of our other ordinances when it comes to big events. So I understand there's a lot of angst. There's a lot of folks that were not part of the original language when we put that in place in probably 2017. At the time, it was Commissioner June Culinary and I that worked with many of the groups to ensure that we could still allow events to take place. So today what we're going to do is take public comment. We're going to hear from folks. I'm going to ask the police department to give a synopsis of what the protest process is today and how we navigate through that. And then I anticipate for the board that we will probably put it on the next agenda so that we can address any concerns. And because we have so many new people to our valley, they're not aware of where we've been. So I wanted to give folks the opportunity to understand for instance, I had some comments this morning, we can't do items 1 through 11. Well, items 1 through 11 have been in place for a long time, so, and we worked with folks. So this time, if you'd like to come on public comment and give me any additional information, that would be great. So I'll go ahead and open up the public comment. Anybody wishing to speak? So I see a lot of newcomers, so don't be afraid. We're easy to work with. Come forward and give us your thoughts, please. Yep, come forward, state your name for the record.
Hello, good morning. Oh, we'll do it like that. My name is...
You can pull the microphone up so you don't have to squinch down.
Thank you. My name is Sean Navarro. I'm coming here to speak publicly about the proposed ordinance. I'm a member of this group called Las Vegas Democratic Socialists of America, blah, blah, blah. We out here. Certainly the co-chair of that group. Also, I'm just a concerned citizen in person. I think this ordinance is beyond ridiculous. I think so far nothing has been done to speak to the concerns of people. You say you understand. I don't see how. Only thing that's been done is a continued escalation of violence by the police against protesters, continued erosions of our civil liberties. What we do is we provide water to people, we provide first aid to people, and this would prevent that. I think it's beyond ridiculous. You're talking about 6-month jail sentence for carrying a bag or a purse, $1,500 fine when we have the highest unemployment in the nation. You're further just criminalizing a population that's just trying to express their First Amendment right. I think it calls a question what is going on with the militarization of our police. Why do our police need machine guns? Why do they need assault weapons that are intended for military war zones here in our own country? Why do they need riot gear, especially at a time during a pandemic when we can't afford PPE for our doctors and for our nurses? I just want to make it clear, I'm just speaking for myself personally. I can't speak for the entire movement, obviously, especially not being black. It's not my call to say. For me personally, I have no ill will towards police. I wish nothing but the best. I wish for them to be safe. But I just think this is ridiculous. I think you're just going to see a continued escalation. And when we talk about the police, we're not talking about individual policemen. We're talking about the institution of the police. I think it is fair to as Americans, to speak out against people who are supposed to serve, who in their whole deal is this. I'm sorry, I'm very nervous. Their whole thing is to serve the public. So I think it's right to criticize them when we see something that we don't agree with. And I think we're just going to see things getting worse. Nothing's being done to address the COVID crisis. There's no more aid going out to people. People can't work. People are hopeless. People are getting more agitated because they're not being listened to. This didn't start last week. This has been going on for decades, maybe even longer than that, and nothing's being done. Again, the only thing that's being done is more violence against people just trying to express their right, more erosions of our civil liberties, and I just think that's completely wrong. I hope nothing, I really pray to God that we're able to find a peaceful resolution to this, but I don't see that happening. I really don't, because people aren't being listened to. Why don't you bring the leaders of the community into here and hear them out? Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Black
you.
Lives Matter.
And I hope you'll stay and listen to the rest of the presentation. So thank you.
I probably won't because this is ridiculous.
Okay,
sham.
thank you.
Black Lives Matter.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. My name is Naomi Okada. That's O-K-A-D-A. I live at 2803 Viavanti Street in Henderson, Nevada, and that's in District G. I strongly urge you to oppose these amendments. I have many concerns about the proposed amendments, but I will limit to just a few for brevity. Most important, the proposed changes would severely limit protesters' ability to carry water. We all know so well in the hot and arid desert climate here in Las Vegas that easy access to water is critical. Residents of Southern Nevada should not be forced to choose between exercising our constitutional right to assembly and the ability to carry sufficient life-sustaining water in the summer heat. In addition, if I'm understanding them correctly, these amendments would also limit the ability of medical personnel and everyone else to carry first aid equipment in a bag. The only exemption to this I could find reads medical devices necessary for the immediate assistance of the patient utilizing such device. If we are only allowed to carry bags containing medical equipment that is to be immediately used, how are protesters and demonstrators who are unexpectedly injured at the protest or the demonstration to receive emergency medical care? I'm currently a PhD student at UNLV. Like many other universities, UNLV is a site of many protests and other peaceful demonstrations. Also, like many other universities, UNLV students regularly carry large purses, briefcases, backpacks, computer bags, and camera bags, all of which would be prohibited while attending any public assembly. How will enforcement officers determine which students are attending the protests and which are just there for class? National Guard soldiers at Kent State University in 1970 did not seem to be able to effectively make this distinction. How will this be different? When does UNLV count, or does it ever not count, as a place of assembly? To me, it seems that the wording of this proposed legislation stands to make criminals of anyone who carries a bag in public. Finally, I understand that people are scared. I'm scared too, and I understand why this board would be considering drastic measures at this time. However, I question how effective these proposed changes will even be at preventing violence at protests and other gatherings. Weapons, firearms, or otherwise, all of the ones listed, or nearly all the ones listed in the pre-existing code, can be easily concealed in clothes. I ask you, how exactly will banning bags at public gatherings stop violent criminals? In summary, I'm vehemently against the proposed changes to Clark County Code. I have concerns regarding both the specific wording and the overall goal of these changes. Please do not support these changes. Thank you for your time.
And I have 2 microphones, so you can come on down. Good morning.
Good morning. I am not from the state of Nevada. I am traveling in from another state, but however, I am a U.S. American citizen. And so I come to represent our whole country that is trembling. And from the mountaintops on, I read a little scripture myself. And the only thing that it's been a very, very painful time, because I don't know if anybody else remembers, but this reminds us when our great leader, Dr. Martin Luther King, was assassinated for the same thing that is being supposedly protested now. We've waited 50 years to get some of those things straightened out, and we've waited very patiently to be able to be recognized and given our rights. And we are going to be able to do that. We will continue to wait, and we will continue to not destroy our government, but to work with our government with such great leadership as we have right now with this commission board. I honor you, Commissioner Weekly, who is doing all that he can, and I hope that when he is deceased, he will still come back and represent our government and our people in a way that needs to be done. I had a flyer I didn't get a chance to make because I was honoring the stay at home that so many of our protesters have seemed to violate it. But anyhow, I will say it today. Policemen are human beings too. We all are Americans. They're humans until they put on their uniform. And I admire all the security people that are here, that are human, that are hurting, but they have a uniform on to protect. And I honor that and respect that. So in the streets that they're destroying, we as Americans are all like God's children. Some are evil, like possibly some of our policemen are, and some are good. But they're similar if we have to go so humble as to say to our children, we love them all, and America is love. I will be getting this poster together, and I will be joining the streets too to let them know that. And I wanted to do, like Marvin Gaye said, it is terrible when you look at the news. He once wrote a song that says, "What's going on?" And that can apply so much now. I have tissue because my eyes have been filled with tears to see them destroy our country. I think the one word that was used that made other people come to destroy us was that word great. We are a great country, and we need to get back and be about the business of being great. There are many people in the streets that came to destroy us from within. My father fought in World War II, and he said, you know what, this is the greatest democracy country, but one day it shall be destroyed from within. And so I think we need to open our eyes, our ears,
Okay.
and start saving America.
Thank you. And if you could just state your name for the record, ma'am, that'd be helpful.
My name is Claudette Wilson.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wilson. We do have wipes there at the podium, so if you want to wash your hands before and after as you touch the microphone, that would be great. And if you could keep the distance, that's even better. So thank you, Ms. Wilson. Good morning, Mr. Flores.
They're not open.
Can't get them open? Man, they're childproof. Let us fix it for you.
Good morning. My name is Michael Flores. I'm the Chief of Staff for the Nevada System of Higher Education. I'm here on behalf of Nevada System of Higher Education Chancellor Tom Riley and our Southern Nevada institutions, UNLV, the College of Southern Nevada, Nevada State College, and the Desert Research Institute. Madam Chair and members of the Commission, I apologize for not reaching out prior to this hearing to brief you all and to have a discussion on this, and I appreciate the background that you provided, and we just wanted to make sure we had these comments on the record. We want to share with you some concerns we have with the emergency ordinance before you today that would prohibit backpacks, briefcases, among other items, at rallies, protests, and demonstrations on public property. Social movements have a long history of being born on the campuses of our nation's higher education institutions. Nevada public college and university campuses welcome the free exchange of ideas, thoughts, and speech that often help change policies, shape laws, and influence history. On our campuses, these free and sometimes spontaneous assemblies can often take the form of peaceful rallies, protests, and demonstrations. Another very common practice on our campuses are faculty, students, and staff carrying backpacks, briefcases, and purses, among other items. We would not want this ordinance to hinder the free spread of ideas by giving pause to a student carrying a backpack filled with books on UNLV's mall from taking part in such an assembly for fear of facing legal ramifications. We do understand and appreciate the seriousness of this discussion at this time and support the safety of all state and local law enforcement officers. Our hearts are with you, but we ask the Commission to consider our concerns and perhaps make this ordinance temporary until the fall semester gets back underway in August. And we'll be available and reach out to have further discussions on this, and appreciate the time today, Madam Chair and members of the Commission.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Cole Nasrallah. I live at 1563 Elizabeth Avenue. I am a Las Vegas resident, and I'm an NSHE professor. I'm actually really happy to hear from everybody involved in the schools. Most of what I came to say has already been said. I have concerns about encouraging my students to participate in free speech activities and other protests, especially when I know they carry backpacks. I work at CSN, and many of my students commute on buses. They don't have places to deposit these backpacks. They don't have places to safely store their personal items. I don't think further dispossessing already disenfranchised people is productive or goal-oriented. I can't in good conscience encourage my students to voice their opinions or participate in our democracy so long as they can't do so safely. There's a huge burden on these students, and I want them to feel like they have a voice and can participate. stopping them from carrying backpacks and other items necessary to carry water, distribute literature, attend university is chilling to free speech. So thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Hello, my name is Hernan Rodriguez. I'm a Las Vegas resident. I reside within District D. I'm just here to voice my concerns over this ordinance. I don't think it's a smart idea to do this. I understand that this is written before these protests happen, but the timing doesn't seem correct. It doesn't seem like it's justifiable. These protests are in response to a system which has failed them considerably for a long period of time. And so I understand that this is you're trying to do the best for the county and you're trying to calm, but what you're doing is just silencing a group that has already been silenced for too long, and you're just putting this problem off to future generations to deal with again. If you just choose to follow the path that other other officials have in the past, where they prefer to keep everything nice and quiet, keep the status quo rather than speak on what's actually happening and do your part to bring about change. And like everyone has said, prohibiting backpacks isn't going to stop these ideas of police brutality, systematic racism within our community. They're just gonna silence them for a moment and bring momentarily peace to the county, because it brings about fear to them that they can't voice their speech without going 6 months into jail or paying a $1,000 fine for carrying a backpack, which would be carrying first aid or water. Thank you, that's it.
Thank you. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. My name is Stacy McDonald. I live at 1700 Alta Drive, right up the street. I rode my bike here. That's what I do often. I try to not pollute the air and all that. I take RTC. My point in getting at, this is my purse. I'm protesting too. I'm peacefully protesting. I was out there peacefully protesting with people. This is my purse. By passing this amendment, you would give police a ability to say, oh no, that's a backpack, or question me on it, or possibly fine me on it. This carries all my belongings. Oftentimes, if I'm holding a sign, it fits my water bottle. This has my phone, my camera, well, my phone's in my back pocket right now, but usually it has my phone, my camera. It leaves my hands free to hold up a sign or do anything else that I need, help somebody. Many people that I saw out there with coolers and backpacks, they weren't up to funny activity or doing anything wrong. They were handing out water to people. They were helping people. They had snacks. They were taking care of us. We were taking care of each other as a community. And I think by passing this amendment, what you're going to do is you're going to mess that up. And you're going to invoke fear on people and coming out. Like, I don't want to get fined. I don't want to go to jail. Like, I don't want any problems, but I do want my voice to be heard. Changes need to be made, and that's why I'm out here doing this. I've been here for 6 years. I came here from Ohio. Like, people back home are doing the same thing. You know, you've got all 50 states protesting. You guys passing this amendment is really going to mess with that here. And I feel like it's going to hinder people from wanting to come out and have their voice be heard. And it's really short and sweet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did I get your name? I don't remember hearing your name.
Stacy McDonald.
Oh, okay, that's right. I got your address in my brain. So, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Joshua Padilla, Padilla. So first off, I want to condemn the horrible actions that were committed recently by an individual who shot a police officer and put them in critical condition. Any direct violence against any human being is a disgusting and deplorable act. With that being said, I understand the intentions behind this. I understand the intentions behind this amendment, and I agree with them. But this amendment will do significantly more harm than good. The implementation is completely wrong. Prohibiting people from bringing backpacks, purses, etc. is not going to stop someone from bringing a gun. The only thing this amendment is going to do is increase unrest. There's absolutely no possible way that every single person going to the protest this evening will be informed on this amendment, and when officers start to enforce this policy, it's only going to piss off and fire up protesters even more who are unaware of the change. This is just going to increase tensions, which is going to increase the chance of violence taking place. If you want to ease tensions and reduce any violent acts from taking place, you need to humanize police officers and rebuild the trust that is completely shattered. The online videos of Metro officers and their acts of aggressions on peaceful protesters are not sitting well with people. And instead of giving another opportunity for a physical altercation to take place, allow for officers to talk face to face with people. People want to be heard right now, and this amendment is just creating another chance for an unnecessary altercation to take place between an officer and a person that is simply demanding to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Morning.
Good morning. My name is Christian Robles. I have lived in Vegas all 21 years of my life. I am a U.S. citizen, and I am living in fear. I think I can safely assume that we are all living in fear. This year has offered one thing after another that scares me, and this is the next thing. I understand that the fears of this commission and the feeling that they need to act for the injustice that was recently performed on a local officer, but I still urge that you guys reject today's proposal limiting the rights of Nevadans and the ways in which they can protest. First, I find this act to be heavily reactionary. Given the time between the George Floyd protests and the date of this meeting, I cannot accept this commission has fully weighed the long-term implications of passing such a measure. It feels knee-jerk, and it just doesn't feel right. Also, it feels counterintuitive to the many freedoms that this great state of Nevada protects. If I can publicly drink a beer or even open carry a firearm down the streets of Las Vegas, then it serves no purpose to the people that people are stopped from carrying a backpack, a purse, or a glass bottle full or empty at a protest. Third, there's already laws that prohibit violent acts. I also condemn the acts that happen on a local metro officer. I condemn violence. And it doesn't seem that a backpack is going to stop any of this, considering all the other laws I already stated are possible here. There's been other times where people have assimilated with assault rifles, and there's been very close altercations with officers that could have led in bloodshed here in the state. But luckily, we were able to work it out together as the people and the authorities, but this make it harder to lead to civil unrest. And thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Samantha Tice. That's spelled Thies, and I'm at 3179 Key Largo Drive in Las Vegas. I'm a summer graduate from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas with a master's degree in communication studies and a focus on legal communication and rhetoric. I'm here today to oppose this emergency ordinance. This ordinance is a slap in the face to First Amendment rights for protesters in Clark County. We are protesting to call to an end for police brutality, to end the targeting of Black people throughout our nation. We cannot safely do that if this ordinance is passed. I have two major concerns that I will focus on my comment for today. First and foremost, a protest in the summer in the middle of a desert requires preparation and vigilance in order to stay safe. The heat index of over 100 degrees, even at night, necessitates people have access to food and water, as well as other resources such as safety masks, gloves, and hand sanitizer. All of these are particularly important with COVID-19 happening. Wonderful people at protests are using their personal vehicles to provide these materials, and others carry supplies on their person via backpacks, coolers, and bags to directly assist protesters. This ordinance would materially impact the ability for protesters to stay out and continue to protest in the desert heat. This ordinance is a representation of a political move to end protests writ large, and it would make it extremely difficult, if not impossible, to keep people safe while participating. Speaking of safety, my next concern includes medics and medical treatment for protesters. As someone who has been protesting for several days, I have seen firsthand the escalation of protest sites on behalf of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. I've been shot in the back of the head with no provocation while running away from police officers shooting bullets and tear gas. It is obvious the police have no intention to de-escalate these protests, which means medics are a critical part of this movement. Without backpacks, carts, or wagons to carry medical supplies, which this ordinance would ban, there's no way people could assist those who were gassed, those who were shot with rubber bullets, or those who have otherwise been injured and need medical attention. This is another political move to make a protest unsafe to attend. We are in the middle of a pandemic. It's not like these people can just go to the hospital. The police are not required to issue a warning before enforcing this ordinance, and only will if it is feasible, whatever that might mean. They are already hurting nonviolent protesters. The text of this ordinance states that it does not materially affect the ability of attendees to exercise their First Amendment rights, and I wholeheartedly disagree with this statement. And for these reasons, I urge you to vote no and stand up for the rights and safeties of protesters in Clark County. Thank you. Black Lives Matter.
Thank you. Morning.
Good morning. Hello, my name is Riley Taylor. That's spelled Taylor, and my address is 10209 Birch Bluff Lane. I'm a recent graduate from UNLV with a master's degree in public administration, and I'm going to try and put that degree to some use today. I'm here to convey my opposition to the proposed ordinance that would amend Clark County Code to include unnecessary and harmful regulations and prohibitions on backpacks, coolers, carts, and to my understanding would also ban folks in cars from providing needed supplies to the protesters. The ordinance leaves me and other members of the public with many questions. ordinance. It's unclear, especially in Section 13, exactly what items would be prohibited. It appears that by banning any vehicle propelled by humans, electricity, or mechanical means, that would prohibit folks in cars and trucks who are attempting to supply protesters with water, masks, and medical supplies from doing so. The folks in cars and those walking around with coolers are handing out important resources, and I'm not sure what banning rolling coolers full of water and carts full of medical supplies is going to accomplish other than increasing the danger and risk of injury for protesters. The introduction to the ordinance indicates that this ban is being implemented because individuals have used bags and carts to carry banned items to the protest in order to inflict injury on law enforcement personnel, as well as cause property damage. But this is according to who? Where's the evidence to support these claims? The introduction also states that it's protesters who pose a real and serious threat to life and safety. But as someone who's actively participating in the protest, the only times that there's ever been a serious threat to my life and safety was when the police were shooting rubber bullets at myself and fellow protesters and hitting us with tear gas as we were non-violently protesting on the sidewalk. The Band-Aids, water, and spray bottle, as well as the extra masks I was carrying in my bag, were all essential to address our injuries. It's also unclear how this ordinance would be enforced, or exactly how widely it would be enforced. The ordinance itself states that the police only have to issue a warning when it's feasible, which is obviously up for interpretation, and will lead to many not receiving any kind of warning before their supplies are forcibly taken from them, or worse. Not everyone protesting will know about this ordinance. Does this mean that people who are carrying bags are going to be indiscriminately grabbed from the crowds and arrested? How do police plan to prevent people from bringing supplies to the protest? This leads me to believe that this ordinance is just meant to create additional avenues for the police to target Black communities by selectively choosing to arrest certain people who are breaking the law, since they won't be able to arrest everyone there. There's already a ban on rocks, bricks, and other potentially harmful materials at protests in Clark County. What exactly is the goal of this ordinance if not to make the lives of protesters more difficult and dangerous? How is this supposed to help anyone? I was born and raised in Las Vegas, and this is my home, and I can't stand by silently while political actions are being taken to silence Black people and actively put members of our community in harm's way. If any of these questions resonate with you as well, I'd urge you to vote no to this emergency ordinance. Okay, thank you.
Thank
Black
you.
Lives Matter.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning. My name is Aaron Guevara, Guevarra, and I live in 2208 Santa Rita Drive. I'm here today to voice my concerns with the ordinance in question and demand that it be voted down. The banning of backpacks, purses, and other bags not only encroaches on the right to peacefully assemble, but poses a danger to those who carry vital personal belongings within them. With daytime temperatures here in the valley reaching upwards over 100 degrees, it would be a travesty to disallow vessels that store water. By passing this ordinance, you not are only abridging the constitutional right to assemble peacefully, but sending a message to young constituents like myself that striving for justice through assembly will lead to the repression of our First Amendment rights. This also sets a dangerous precedent on what local governments are allowed to ban in order to exchange safety for liberty. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
My name is Ileana. I'm not going to be nearly as well-spoken as some of the people here, but I did want to mention that this ordinance does not seem like it's going to be the bigger picture solution to what's at stake here. I feel that this was meant to be something that was supposed to keep peaceful protesting peaceful and the people out there safe, but I do not see how that's going to happen, especially since, as someone has mentioned before, Las Vegas comes to very, very high heats, and so these backpacks are needed for people who need to keep their stuff safe, but as well as keep water bottles. I think that goes specifically to coolers and backpacks and things like that. So I don't see the goal of this ordinance being met by passing this. So I would urge you to vote no on this ordinance.
Thank you. I do have someone on the phone, so I'd like to go to the person on the phone first. And if you could come on up, and anybody else that would like to speak on public comment, please come forward. Otherwise, I'll make you my last person, and let me take the person on the phone.
Good morning. I don't know if you can hear me. I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
My name is Oliver Sebald. I'm a Nevada bar number 13397. I saw this ordinance this morning, and I was very shocked at its contents. This board has a history with litigation regarding public forums, specifically Venetian Casino Resort versus ACLU, 2001, and you are over-regulating a traditional public forum by this ordinance. I see it also as facially discriminatory against the poor. Some people can work around this ordinance because they have the resources to do it. But others, specifically the poor and the homeless, could be caught up in this particular ordinance. I'm very angry when I see things like this because it screams fear, not logic. And also, we don't look back here at specifically what has happened with this commission before, overstepping their authority. This is a traditional public forum, and the jurisprudence regarding this speaks very loudly regarding being careful about what you can regulate. There have been many ordinances like this passed before. I guess I'm not surprised from that standpoint. However, I think we should learn from the past and want to circle back again to Venetian Casino Resort versus ACLU 2001. It was an embarrassment, and I hope that this is not passed, and I stridently object to any type of ordinance that tells people what to wear. What comes next? Are you going to tell me which tie I have to wear when I'm protesting? Are you going to tell me that I can't wear tennis shoes because I can run too fast? This is appalling to hear. I can't believe that you're looking to take away backpacks, which are a traditional thing that a student carries. People carry backpacks all the time. This is all I wanted to say, and I appreciate you taking my phone call. I had a difficult time finding the number, but I was helped by someone who was very kind and transferred me over. Thank you for listening to me today.
Thank you. Go ahead, ma'am. Come forward. Go ahead, sir. You want to take the other microphone? Anybody else wishing to speak, now would be the time for you to come forward. Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for giving an opportunity to speak. I'm a UNLV student. I'm a Las Vegas resident, have been my whole life. I'm here to voice my concerns as a student and as a member of the community. I've attended peaceful protests in the days past in which people were giving out water, masks, and de-escalating tensions with police and other protesters who did hope to be more violent. And I had a very good experience there. I was safe, my friends, my peers, other protesters were safe, acting appropriately within the law. At those protests, I did not see anybody bringing anything illegal or unethical. I just want to say that I implore you to understand what it means to have police in full riot gear while simultaneously taking water, first aid products, and educational materials from protesters. Please understand that these protests are meant for people to be heard. Excuse me one second. Any loss of life in a community is a tragedy, and many will grieve the loss of Officer Michelonis forever. Our community will continue to grieve for all of these reasons. And I understand that, but please do not take away others' rights because of this loss. This is a peaceful protest here. Me being here, this is a protest. I have a purse, I am peaceful. Please listen to your community. Please hear these voices and hear these protests. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, my name is David Vasquez. I live at 926 Drumgully. I'm here today just to say how I feel. This is my first time at a public hearing. Normally would never expect myself to be here, but I think what you guys are doing is unjust, and the whole country is going to be watching what we do here. And people want to come to Vegas. And what you're doing is showing people why they should not come, because you're taking liberties and our rights away. I don't understand how someone bringing a backpack, a cooler, or anything on them is going to stop them from protesting. We shouldn't have any reason to slow us down to protest. We have that right. We're born with it. Especially. Everybody in the world is watching us, burning buildings, hurting each other, and because we're grieving. Over one man's death, the whole country is grieving.
The officer, I just want to be clear, the
and
officer is
and the
alive
officer,
and well
he signed
today.
up for what he signed up for. And I wish him the speedy recovery, but at the same time, what you're trying to do to the citizens of this city is unjust.
Okay, thank you. Sir.
Good morning. My name is Steve Ramos. I'm the president of the Las Vegas Police Protective Association. I represent over 3,500 of our police officers and corrections officers and city marshals. It is very unfortunate that we're having to look at an ordinance that would impact some of the people out there peacefully protesting. And as far as I'm concerned, there are a lot of really good people out there peacefully protesting an issue that they have. and I don't blame them. A lot of our officers, when we look at what happened back in Minneapolis, don't approve of what they saw either. I think our department has done a great job trying to work with the community, but it is to impact and attempt to try and limit the ability to have projectiles. Our officers have had rocks thrown at them the size of my hand, frozen water bottles. Last night's protest at UNLV was wonderful. There were no issues. Our people were there to help the people that wanted to I feel bad for the young lady that was crying and upset because she should be allowed to go out there and peacefully protest, and sprinkled in amongst the good people are bad people trying to sway the crowds. But I think something like this does benefit our officers to hopefully keep them safe. As you said, Chairwoman, our officer is still alive. He's still fighting for his life, but he is showing signs of improvement. Our officers are out there trying to stand by to make sure and hope that the good people that want to express the way they feel are kept safe. And it's unfortunate that others are in that mix, but we do support this to make sure that we can potentially limit the amount of rocks and frozen bottles and things like that. It is unfortunate, though, that the ones that need water and things like that could be impacted. But maybe we can figure out a way to, as we do at EDC and places like that, to have water stations set up when we know that there's protests that maybe the county or the city or places like that could try and help with concerns like that. So I appreciate your time to the commission, and thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Mr. Ramos, anybody else wishing to speak during public comment? I have one last email that I'm going to have the county manager read into the record, and then I'll close the public comment.
And Madam Chair, we do have 2 callers on the phone as well. So
Okay.
if those can be the last 2, I suppose.
I'm going to have Mr. Calloway make a presentation because we started this in March, but I want to do the public comment, and then I'm going to have you come up afterwards. Okay.
Dear Commissioners, actually this is from Melissa Buford, President of SVR HOA. Dear Commissioners, as I couldn't be there today due to short notice in the COVID-19, my concerns are as follows. I am very concerned about an ordinance that would limit our fundamental rights to protest, right for free speech. The ordinance would endanger protesters further. We cannot limit water, first aid materials, literature, or other necessities. We cannot be forced to choose to limit our constitutional rights due to fear of a few bad actors. This is a slippery slope to limit the right to assemble is unconstitutional, especially due to the climate conditions in Nevada. The way to stop the violence is through community engagement and not rash choices based out of fear. Further oppression of the oppressed will lead to larger problems. I am vehemently opposed to this ordinance. I do favor being a part of the community consultation on how to better address the concerns of the protesters through community engagement. If we address the concerns of the community, the violence will stop. Let's work together to make Clark County a better and safer place for all equally. Our job as community leaders is to lead and not oppress.
Okay, and we have 2 callers.
Callers, please press star 9 if you'd like to make a comment.
Yes. Okay, I have somebody unmuted. Would you like to go ahead and speak? Hello? Okay, let's try the other caller. They can always comment at the second period of public comment. Okay, I don't have anybody on the phone wishing to speak. We've unmuted you. You can always comment at the second comment period.
Hello.
Okay, yep, go ahead, ma'am.
Hi. Thank you. Hi, my name is Nikki Levy, Levy. I'm a staff attorney at the American Civil Liberties Union of Nevada. We're just calling to let you know that we believe that the bag ban being proposed by the county today will unconstitutionally potentially affect Nevadans' ability to engage in, protected First Amendment activities. As many of the other speakers have said, the temperature this week is going to hit triple digits, and this proposal is going to limit the demonstrators' ability to take care of themselves and bring water and food and medications and first aid supplies. We don't want people having to choose between protesting, demonstrating, and their health and safety. We're also concerned about the effect of this ban on journalists and photographers. We know that the ordinance accounts for equipment used by professional media, but we remain concerned about potential interaction between the media and law enforcement. We're not sure that, in the heat of things, law enforcement will be able to tell who's media and who's not. We're also concerned because student and amateur journalists who may not fall under the professional category also have a right to cover the events taking place. These demonstrations have sprung up across the state because people want to speak out against racist policing and use of force issues. And we're disappointed that rather than addressing these issues, we're seeing proposals like this one, which we fear will lead to increased interactions with law enforcement. So we're urging the county to reconsider policies. We want everyone to be safe, but we can't be stifling peaceful protests. And we want to make sure the county is actually focusing on the issues at the heart of these demonstrations. Thank you.
Thank you. Yolanda, you want to read in the last one? Okay, they're going to have to wait. Go ahead.
I have a statement from the ACLU of Nevada, a statement on Clark County proposal. This is from Wesley Jewell, a communications manager of ACLU. The ban being proposed by the Clark County Commission today will affect Nevadans' ability to engage to protected First Amendment activities. The temperature is going to hit triple digits today, and this proposal will limit demonstrators' access to water, food, medication, and first aid supplies. Without access to these things, people may very well have to choose between their health and safety and exercising their right to protest. Journalists and photographers, also protected under the First Amendment, often need to carry large bags and backpacks to hold their equipment. While the ordinance accounts for equipment used by the professional media, we remain concerned about enforcement against the press and against student or amateur journalists and photojournalists who have a right to cover the events taking place. Demonstrations across Nevada have sprung up to speak out against racist policing and the use of force issues. Rather than addressing these crucial issues, we are seeing proposals like this, which will certainly lead to increased interactions with law enforcement. We urge the Clark County Commissioners to reconsider policies that tamp down on peaceful protests and instead focus on the issues at heart of these demonstrations.
Thank you. And I have one last caller. Okay, you're unmuted. You want to go ahead and speak?
Hi, my name's Emily Driscoll. I live at 1972 Canyon Breeze Drive. I am a law student here in Las Vegas at UNLV Boyd School of Law, and I am also a legal observer for the protests. I'm certified by the National Lawyers Guild to observe protests for legal purposes. At these protests, I have seen protesters complying with police. They are peacefully sitting back while police point guns, while they throw tear gas, while they shoot flashbangs into the crowd. I personally was lunged at and maced by a police officer. And my team and I, we wear shirts that label us as legal observers. We speak to police. We are not participating in the protests, but I can say firsthand that my backpack is one of the most important things that I have on me. I carry my notebooks, which are full of confidential attorney work product. I carry supplies like water bottles, which we go through like crazy, just drinking water, not even for first aid purposes. We need medical supplies for people who are hurt. And I carry a decently big first aid kit that I could not fit in a purse, that I could not fit in a small backpack. It is essential that protesters and attendees are able to carry supplies with them and not be worried about the discretion of the police being able to arrest them for any purpose. As a legal observer, I am a neutral party, but I think that this ordinance could be incredibly harmful to attendees and to the entirety of Las Vegas' First Amendment right to protest. I strongly urge the commissioners not to pass this ordinance.
Okay, does that complete your comments? Okay.
That's all, yeah.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and close the public comment period, and I'm going to start with myself before I ask Mr. Calloway to
Madam
come up.
Chair, can I read the item in the rest
Oh,
of the
yeah, sorry.
agendas?
Sorry.
Item number 2 is the approval of the agenda.
Okay, Commissioner Gibson has moved for the approval of the agenda. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, please cast your vote. That motion passes.
Item number 3 is a public hearing, which is to conduct a public hearing and adopt an ordinance by emergency amending Clark County Code Section 12.30.010, which regulates the possession of certain items at public protests, demonstrations, rallies, picket lines, and public assemblies to preclude the use of purses, backpacks, luggages, and similar items capable of carrying prohibited items during such demonstrations, providing for immediate effectiveness and for other provisions related thereto.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Calloway, I'm going to have you come forward, but I want to reiterate because I feel like a lot of comments that were made today did not hear my opening statement that we were going to hear the public comments. We were going to walk through what the current process is. And first, let me apologize to Metro because this was brought to me in February, but unfortunately, this board put COVID-19 at the top of everything, so I apologize for not hearing that before then and moving forward sooner. So I own that for dropping the ball, but it's picking my priorities. So secondly, I think there's some miscommunication. This is not prohibiting backpacks, it's prohibiting the larger size of backpacks, and I do think that Ms. Stacy made a great point on maybe her size of backpack was reasonable. So what I'd like you to do and is kind of walk through our current process because we've had a lot of protests in our community for a very long time. And when we first looked at this, right, one of the questions that I addressed for like the Culinary and some of the families, oh, you can't have these sticks, how do you carry your signs, how do you do these things? So we addressed a lot of those. And what I hear today is that people can't go to the hospital, which is contrary to what at least Councilman Knutson and I are promoting people to go back to the doctor, go back to the hospital, because we do want you to do those things. We need you to feel comfortable enough to do it, and we worked pretty hard as a board to ensure. I've also heard that you wouldn't be able to carry water, and a lot of that is not true. It's based on the size of the backpack that we're asking people to use, and maybe it's a clear backpack, and we're a little more clear on that. And so maybe if you could walk through the normal process that we've had where people have asked for a permit, we've walked alongside of them, they've said, yes, we're going to have strollers because it's more of a family type of thing. If you could walk through some of that, because as I said earlier, our community is changing. We have a lot of new folks who are not aware of what our current rules are and things that we're trying to do to make safe. So, you know, one of the things when we talked about this the first of the year is people felt that when they had a cart that then you had people running through the protest and then somebody tripped over the cart and more people got hurt. And so that was one of the conversations that we had on New Year's Eve, and that's kind of why we took it out. So it's not for folks to not have the ability to carry all the necessary things. I live by a backpack myself, but what we're seeing more and more is that backpacks are used for storage of all the items 1 through 11 that are not allowed. So with that, if you could go ahead, Mr. Calloway, would be great.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. I'm Chuck Calloway. I'm the Director of Intergovernmental Services for Metro. And just to make a quick comment before I get into kind of the background of this and to answer your questions, Madam Chair, I've been doing our government relations work for about 11 years, but I've been a police officer with Metro for 31 years. And I worked on the street in patrol my whole career until I took this job. I did patrol and community policing, and we worked very hard over
the course of my career, and we continue to work hard to communicate and build relationships with the community. I worked during the Rodney King riots in the early 90s, and I've been at our operations center during the protests we've had over the last week, and I can tell you that what we're seeing in Las Vegas is nothing. I've never seen anything like it before. It's disturbing, quite frankly. And I'm here today to say that as Metro, we 100% want to have safe, peaceful protests. We want people to be able to go out and to engage in their First Amendment rights safely. We want to ensure that the public is safe, protesters are safe, our businesses are safe, our businesses are not looted, they're not burned, they're not damaged. This is vital right now for our community. We are not here to limit someone's First Amendment rights. We are here to protect people. And I will explain the quick background of this. A couple years ago, we approached the County Commission regarding an ordinance for New Year's Eve. The purpose of that ordinance, we had the bombing during the Boston Marathon. There had been some attacks overseas in Paris, and there were other instances where bombs and other types of devices were being put into backpacks and then left at a location, and then later on when crowds gathered, those devices were set off and people were killed and people were injured. We approached the County Commission at that time about New Year's Eve to ask for a bag ordinance or backpack ordinance to prohibit those types of devices or bags at protests. We worked, it was quite contentious at first. We had a lot of people come forward and oppose it. We worked hand in hand with the ACLU. We worked with the Culinary Union. We worked with the Fashion Show Mall and retailers on the Strip. We worked with the hotel properties, with Virginia Valentine and her folks, with the Resort Association. And ultimately, we came up with the language that is currently in the statute for New Year's Eve regarding backpacks and bags and strollers. The main purpose, Madam Chair, you mentioned for the carts, the purpose there was, during our discussions, it had come up that you had illegal vendors that were going down on the Strip selling items like T-shirts and merchandise, then they did not have a business license, and they were using large carts. And with the crowd of people down there, if something were to happen, someone fires off a gunshot or something occurs and everyone starts running, those carts impede people's travel and they make it a dangerous situation. So that's why carts were included in the language. A year or two later, we had brought forth an ordinance regarding protests. And again, we worked closely with the Culinary Union on that to, in fact, some of the language that you see in the statute was recommended to us by the Culinary at that time, involving the poles that they used to put their signs up. And at that time, it was Chairman Sisolak was the commissioner. We worked to allow the confetti shooters and the items that fire T-shirts into the crowd, and the Culinary worked hand in hand with us. And so you see the language that's currently in statute regarding the protest ordinance. What we're here today to ask you, with the violence that we've seen over the last few weeks, we're asking for simply a mergence of the two ordinances. And we're not opposed to this being temporary to evaluate it. We're asking for the New Year's Eve language regarding the bags and the backpacks to be included in the protest ordinance so that it applies in those cases as well. Again, with the total intent of providing people safety down there, safety for protesters, safety for the public, and safety for our officers. What we're currently seeing, and I will show you some photographs here in a minute, and I will say this also, we have hours and hours of body camera footage that we are currently going through and documenting. We have some cases, felony cases against people where backpacks were involved in that, and I checked through our legal folks, and unfortunately today I can't show you those pictures because it's ongoing investigation and it might jeopardize the case. So the pictures I have here today are limited, but I'm going to get more pictures for you to show and exhibit what's occurring. What we're currently seeing out there, is that initially, the protests start, and the organizers come out, and the protesters are very peaceful, and it's very cordial. And our officers are out there to block the roadway, make sure cars don't go down and possibly injure a protester, to make sure that they're allowed to protest peacefully. And this may occur for several hours while people are walking and while they're protesting. And then at some point, we have what we've seen as agitators in the crowd, people that start throwing the frozen water bottles, people that start throwing bricks and rocks, people that are throwing M80 firecrackers or illegal fireworks that they're getting somewhere into the crowd. And at that point, and then we're also seeing spray painting. People are carrying cans of spray paint in their bags. They're pulling those out, and they are spray painting people's property. They're spray painting our patrol cars. They're slicing the tires on the patrol cars, smashing the windows out of businesses, smashing the windows out of patrol cars with rocks and things that they have in these bags. In one case, we saw one individual who had a large backpack full of bricks and stuff like that, and he set it down, and then other protesters came and retrieved rocks and stuff from that backpack that they could use to throw either at building windows or at our officers. Once our officers start getting pelted with rocks and bottles, we then change our tactics and we ask the crowd to disperse, and we give them an opportunity to disperse, and if they do not disperse after they're engaging in illegal activity, at that point we have been deploying tear gas. I've heard a lot of talk about rubber bullets in the media. We do not use rubber bullets. We use pepper balls. If you're familiar with paintball guns, they're almost identical, except the inside of them, instead of paint, they have a pepper type spray. Yeah, they sting a little if you're hit by one, but the intent is to fire them into the crowd and have them bust open and disperse the pepper spray so that the crowd will leave the area. We, again, block roads and give them an egress so that they can safely leave after they've been given the dispersal order. That's typically how we're currently handling once the protest becomes violent in nature and people are breaking the law. To give you an example of some of the things we're seeing, these pictures are from the last couple of nights. The first one that I'll show you is this happened near a protest that was out at the Summerlin Mall. This individual was stopped with a backpack. What you see on the hood of the car is the items that were in that backpack. There's incendiary devices such as M80 fireworks. There's a web belt that had weapons on it. We're also seeing Molotov cocktails. We have a current arson investigation involving individuals that had Molotov cocktails in a backpack, and obviously I couldn't bring you the pictures of that today, but that occurred over the weekend as well. The next picture I'm going to show you is an individual who was stopped and had a number of chemicals in his backpack. I believe I was told he had rocks in the backpack and also some baking soda and some other materials that the investigators believe would be used to dilute tear gas. You can also see in this picture that he has a baseball bat inside of his backpack. Sorry. Baseball bat inside of the backpack, which is obviously illegal under the current ordinance, and I don't know if that's the reason why the officers stopped him in the first place or not. This next picture was taken from a surveillance video, so it's very hazy, and I apologize for that, but it shows an individual with a backpack who had rocks in the backpack and was throwing rocks through business windows. The individual's in the bottom right corner. Again, I apologize because it's kind of blurry. It was taken from a surveillance video. And so these are the types of activities that we're seeing, and that's our concern. We're also concerned with the same concern we had on New Year's Eve, where someone could come down to one of these protests with ill intent, and they could put bags out there with devices in them with the intent of harming the crowd. We're seeing on social media counter-protesters putting stuff on social media that they intend to come down and harm protesters, and so we're cognizant of that too, and we want to prevent further violence. That's our ultimate goal. What I would say here is on a couple of comments that were made in public comment, and then I would be happy to answer questions, is that the statute, again, was taken from what's currently in the statute. It does require officers to give a warning. Our intent with this is that once it would become an ordinance, 95% of the people down there are law-abiding citizens, maybe higher. 99% of them are law-abiding citizens, and they will abide by the ordinance and they won't bring a backpack down there. We're cognizant to the concern about water. I know it's hot out there. I like to hike. I went hiking several weeks ago out in the desert, and I was out for 2 or 3 hours hiking. I put bottles of water in cargo pants. I didn't have a backpack when I was out hiking. I like the idea that was raised about setting up stations where water could be made available to protesters as they come by. And we could certainly work on the language that's in here. This is not codified in stone. This was merely an initial suggestion. We would be happy to work on changing this if need be to accommodate the protesters. In addition, one thing that's missing from this draft today that was in the original language, and I'm not sure why it got left out, it was probably just an oversight, was the actual current statute for New Year's Eve allows clear bags. So if you have a backpack, and I Googled it before I came here, if you look on eBay, I think like for $10 or less, you can get a backpack that's just clear, and you can see right through it. Those types of bags are allowed in the New Year's Eve ordinance, and we would certainly support them being allowed here. We're also cognizant to the first aid concern. Again, when I was in the military and currently in my car outside, I have a first aid kit that has bandages, tourniquets, tons of first aid gear in it, and it's small enough to fit in about a 6x6 box, which is certainly within the realm of what's legal in this statute, under the current statute. We also have EMTs down there every day during the protest to provide first aid to anyone who's injured, whether it's a protester, whether it's an officer. They're there to provide services, and we see them respond very quickly in most cases when people are injured. We are also supportive of the concept of higher education. We realize that this is not a one-size-fits-all. We're supportive of the concerns of Culinary. We'd be happy to work with them again. Our goal here is not to inhibit anyone from going out and exercising their First Amendment rights. It's 100% solely safety. So if we can work with higher education to come up with language that helps them have rallies and protests where their students may have books in the backpack and they may be going from class to class. I have family members who are students at UNLV. I have family members who potentially will go and be involved in rallies and protests, and I certainly want them to be able to have the same ability to express their First Amendment rights. And then finally, the focus here again is not purses either. We don't want to limit someone from carrying personal hygiene items or their car keys or a phone or change in a purse. So we'd be happy to work with folks if we need to tailor this to specifically fit the concerns we're seeing at protests. We're happy to do that. And we're also happy with this being temporarily put in place and then evaluated maybe a month or so down the road if there's a need there as well. But I think that the safety of our citizens and our officers and the public is equally important as the concerns, if not more important than a lot of the concerns that were raised today. And with that, I'd be happy to answer questions.
Okay, can you just answer one more question? Can you explain the process so we don't jail people right away? We work with them, right?
Yes.
What's our consistent process that we've done?
So the process that we've done on New Year's Eve over the past few years, and it's been very successful, is there's three components. There's first education component, and the education component is that we put up signs that say backpacks are not allowed, it's New Year's Eve, no backpacks on the strip. We may put out on TV commercials, PSAs, that backpacks are not allowed, bags of this size, strollers, those types of things that are in the ordinance. And then the hotels typically for New Year's Eve will put flyers in rooms, and so there's that education component. And that would certainly need to be part of this as well. We would need to make sure that prior to protests occurring, we are working with the protest organizers, that we are having dialogue with them to ensure that their folks know what the law is and that there's the education component. Then secondly is the warning component, where if someone does show up down on the strip, and the scenario that was given during New Year's Eve was I get dropped off by my Uber and I'm accidentally a block away from my hotel and I'm pulling my luggage down the street. And an officer comes up to me and says, hey, no luggage on the street, it's New Year's Eve. The warning component is to allow someone the opportunity, once they've been warned, to leave and take that item to their car or to their hotel room, and then obviously no enforcement takes place. It's a warning. The language that was put in regarding when feasible is like the scenario I described where a person comes up with a bag and all of a sudden rocks and stuff are coming out of the bag. Obviously, it's not feasible at that point to walk up and say, please take your backpack and leave the strip. At that point, action needs to be taken. So there are exigent circumstances, but it is our policy and the practice that we've used on New Year's Eve throughout the last couple of years that warnings are given and people are given every opportunity to take the item back to their car, or take it from the strip and thus be in compliance with the ordinance.
Okay, thank you. So let's start with some questions. I'll go Commissioner Knapp, Commissioner Jones. We'll just work our way down. Okay, go ahead.
Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Calloway, for your presentation. Could you speak a little bit more to the ability, and from what I've seen in the last week here, I think the journalists who've been covering this, particularly the local journalists, have done an exceptional job. And a lot of them have, in order to conduct the type of coverage that they've done, they have to get very close, they have to be in the thick of it. And I have concerns about how the police department will distinguish journalists, particularly it was mentioned earlier during public comment, paraprofessional journalists or student journalists. Could you speak a little bit more to that?
Absolutely. That was raised during the original protest ordinance as well. We would work with the journalists. Hopefully they would be displaying some type of badge or some type of press identification. Most of them, I believe, are required to carry that based on the conversations we had with them when the original ordinance went through. And again, there's an exemption for them in the statute. So if they're a photojournalist and they're down there with their camera taking photos of the protest and they have a bag, what would happen is the officer sees them with the bag, thinks they're in violation of the ordinance. They would approach them and give them the warning. And then when the journalist says, no, I'm with the press, here's my ID, here's my camera, then they'd be in compliance with the ordinance and no enforcement would obviously take place. And that's how it's, my understanding is we've had no issues on New Year's Eve with that I'm aware of over the past couple years with journalists being subject to the ordinance.
Is it your understanding that we've had any issues during these events?
It's my understanding that and it's been reported in the news, and I think there's some ongoing criminal investigations going, so I won't speak to specific instances, but it was my understanding that we've had cases where allegedly journalists were in the crowd, possibly antagonizing or enticing the crowd for whatever purpose, and that those folks, again, were given a dispersal order. The officer, I don't know if they did or didn't know if they had, if they were journalists or if they had ID available to be seen, but we have video, surveillance video and body camera footage of all that, and again, there's ongoing criminal cases involving that. So, but nothing's perfect. The ordinance isn't perfect. What we currently have in place is not perfect. And law enforcement, unfortunately, it's not black and white. It's gray, and we have to be flexible, and we have to be able to adapt to the situation that's occurring out there, to what's in the best interest of public safety.
Okay, Commissioner Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Calloway, for your presentation. Definitely want to first send out my regards, prayers, thoughts for the officer who was unfortunately shot on the Strip this week. I do have some serious concerns with the entire premise that the same provisions that have been in place for New Year's Eve apply equally to peaceful protests. There's a First Amendment right to assembly and freedom of speech. There is no First Amendment right to drunken revelry on the Strip. And so I don't think that we can simply adopt over provisions for one type of event that happens one time a year under very closed circumstances versus all events across all the valley at all times. You mentioned that you had previously worked with Culinary and with the ACLU on those prior provisions with regards to New Year's Eve. Did you work with either Culinary or ACLU on this proposal?
Commissioner Chuck Calloway again for the record. Unfortunately, no, and the reason is because the sheriff had some initial conversation with certain folks at the county, I believe including the chairman or chairwoman Kirkpatrick, and it kind of got put on hold when this blew up with COVID and then with the protests and the unfortunate situation in Minnesota, and so it was put on hold. And then after the violence we saw this last weekend, including up and through Monday, it came back to the top. And so because it was suggested that an emergency meeting be held, I did not have an opportunity to reach out and engage Culinary or some of our other partners, ACLU, to try to make the language better, so to speak, and to address the concerns that
So,
you've
and Commissioner
raised.
Jones, I'm gonna, I'll back up a little bit. So initially, we would have met with everyone. I did speak to the Culinary this morning. I did tell them that we will continue to work with them and we will put this on hold. So it's on me, not the sheriff. You know, there's been tons of public comment, people wanting a curfew, people wanting the protesting to stop. So I have been in constant communication, and I actually brought it up to the sheriff on Saturday that maybe this is the time that we revisit this. So it's my fault. I own it. As I said to the Culinary this morning, I will work with them. That's why I said that I would hold this, but we needed to have a starting point. So it's on me. It's not on the sheriff. I brought it up to the sheriff Saturday night, Yolanda, 10:30, 11 maybe. So it's on me. I own it.
I appreciate that. You mentioned that this is supposed to be temporary, but that's definitely not how I read the proposed ordinance change. This is something that would apply for an indefinite time frame and to, again, all locations, no time, place, or manner restriction.
Commissioner Chuck Calloway again for the record. I believe what I said was we were open to it being temporary. I realize that the statute currently, as drafted for today's meeting, does not say it's temporary, but we as Metro, we're open to it being temporary and then reevaluating it at a month down the road to see if it's too intrusive on people's rights or to see if it's accomplishing making our protests safer for everyone.
Mary Ann she wants to chime in.
I just wanted to put it on the record that a few people that did talk to me did ask for a temporary sunsetting and have a discussion, but I put it in permanent because this board can always make a ordinance less restrictive, and I wanted to make sure you had all your options available. So the fact that it doesn't have a temporary or sunset provision is on me, just for the record.
Okay. Also, you talked about the process and in terms of warnings that are provided to protesters. That also isn't in the ordinance as I read it.
I believe there's warning language taken from, I would defer to legal, but I believe the warning language is in the ordinance. But I believe it's in both ordinances, both the protest ordinance and the New Year's Eve ordinance, and this language on bags was taken from the New Year's Eve ordinances and inserted into the protest ordinance, so I believe that the warning applies to both, and I would, again, defer to your legal to confirm, and if that's not the case, then we certainly need to add it in.
It is in existing code, and maybe it'd be easier for people reviewing this to have the full existing code in there so that they could review that.
Where is it in code?
It's in 12.30.010, subsection B, and this ordinance just would amend subsection A.
Oh, okay. I'll take a look at that.
And also, further on that, it also talks about an exemption for people with medical devices in that ordinance.
Okay. Again, the whole idea of the New Year's Eve restrictions apply equally to First Amendment processes, I think is just an odd fit. If we just look at, I'm just one person here, just look at things that I've participated in. Prior to being on this county commission, I participated in a rally of more than 700 people right out there for Red Rock, and I brought this bag with me, and under this ordinance that would have been prohibited, and I could have been arrested for simply bringing the bag that I needed in order to address this body. So I have concerns about that. Under section 13, it talks about...
And I'm sorry if I could clarify there, Commissioner. You could be arrested if you were given warning and refused to take the bag away under the current ordinance and you stayed with the bag and disobeyed the lawful order, then yes, theoretically you could be arrested. But more than likely you would be given a warning and asked to leave, and you could have an opportunity to bring the bag to your office or here in the building and then return peacefully to the protest.
Understood. This last Saturday, I did a bike rally where 20 plus of us, we went and encouraged people to vote, and I didn't pull a permit for that, and because that was a vehicle propelled by humans, I also could have been arrested for doing that bike rally. So again, concerns with the concept that we are over-inclusive here. Again, might make sense for New Year's Eve where we close the strip and we don't want a lot of those things going on, doesn't make a whole lot of sense for just a broad exemption for all protest activity. With regards to strollers and diaper bags, I've been to many rallies in which I've brought my own children and pushed them along in their strollers with a diaper bag. And if this were in place, then I would have avoided going altogether. And I know that many other people would have avoided going altogether, because you can't just haul your children on your shoulders or on your hip without having the ability to use a stroller or a diaper bag. So I think I appreciate the intent. The effect will be to deter First Amendment speech rights here.
I certainly appreciate your concerns, Commissioner, and like I said, we'd be happy to work with anyone on the language. Our focus is on those large backpacks that can hold bricks, rocks, Molotov cocktails, frozen bottles of water or glass bottles of water and those things. And again, the initial thought was we already have existing language. Let's take that language and apply it. But as you stated, it's not a one-size-fits all, and we could certainly work with people to try to change that language so it's more appropriate for what we're experiencing out there. Be happy to work with you on that.
And you mentioned that it's not all black and white, but sometimes, frankly, it is. On Saturday, I attended the rally downtown with my wife, and as we left peacefully, we were able to go back to our car, walk past several Metro officers who let us pass, no problem. Everybody seemed to be getting along. Thursday, I was at an event with Congressman Horsford with Athar Hasibullah, another attorney like me. Athar, like me, left the protest and was waiting for a Uber, not doing anything wrong. And Athar was thrown to the ground by Metro officers and handcuffed. And so sometimes it is black and white in terms of how things are enforced. You mentioned that you were in the process, or the department was in the process, of going through body cam footage, particularly with regards to these backpacks, to identify projectiles that were concealed within backpacks. What is the criteria that Metro is employing for its review? Is it only looking at acts that were perpetrated against officers, or is it also looking at acts that were perpetrated by officers?
We're looking at all acts of violence out there. So if there is, if we believe that an officer has acted inappropriately, we will review that body camera footage and take action. I'm not familiar with the case that you expressed with being thrown to the ground waiting for an Uber, but I will say this: if you believe that or you or the person that it occurred to was treated wrongly by the officer out there, please come down to our agency and file a report against that, make a complaint against that, so that we can pull that body camera footage and we can evaluate it, because we definitely want to hold everyone accountable out there to be doing the right thing.
I appreciate that.
It's vitally important.
I have been in contact with a couple of the members of the Citizen Review Board, as well as the new Executive Director, Julie Craig, with regards to those types of concerns. And then I guess finally, I'm a little concerned that we're here today talking about restricting purses and strollers and not having a discussion about firearms, because it was firearms that were discharged and injured the officer, and downtown it was a man who had several firearms who was shot by an officer in order to protect himself.
Mr. Commissioner, local jurisdictions by state law expressly do not have any authority over the
I'm well
regulation.
aware, Ms. Miller. That was my
That's why
point.
we're not talking about them.
Last session, Assemblywoman Sandra Jauregui, who was herself a fierce 1 October survivor, put forth legislation that would have restored this body's ability to regulate firearms. And I testified on that bill specifically, as you recall, expressing an interest in the possibility that under certain circumstances, we might want to restrict firearms on the strip.
Yes.
And you, Mr. Calloway, testified and expressed concern that providing this body with that ability would push an extreme agenda. So
I'm sorry.
we can have this discussion about strollers and purses, but we ought to also be having the discussion about Metro being a partner at the legislature in ensuring that we can protect your officers from gun violence.
Yes. Commissioner Chuck Calloway again for the record, and I appreciate your comments, and to be clear and clarify my position at the legislature, Metro was neutral on that bill that would have removed the portion that removed, we supported portions of the bill, we were neutral on the portion that would remove the state preemption. The reason for that is a blanket removal of the preemption can be problematic because then you have smaller jurisdictions creating their own laws, and one jurisdiction says you can't have a gun in the glove box, but across the street you can't. Henderson you can't, in North Las Vegas you can. You can't have bullets in the gun in city of Las Vegas, but in the county you can, and it creates a lot of confusion for our officers. But on the other hand, as I said to a reporter who interviewed me, I think the comment that you're referring to about an agenda is I told the reporter that it's a double-edged sword, that there are pros and cons to removing preemption, and that we're not a one-size-fits-all state. With the rural areas and the urban areas, we have different concerns. And I said that if someone in the state, and I was not referring to anyone in particular, I was just making a general statement, that if someone had an extreme agenda that they were going to either A, say guns everywhere, or B, say no guns anywhere, that removal of the preemption provides that avenue. And so I was simply stating to the reporter that there are pros and cons. It's a double-edged sword to the preemption. But we are certainly not opposed at Metro to discussing limiting firearms at protests as well. But obviously, as your counsel said, that is a something that would have to be addressed at the state legislature.
I hope that Metro will change its position and be an advocate for that next time around.
Okay, Commissioner Sagerblum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are you aware of any jurisdiction in the country that has similar language to what we're proposing?
Chuck Calloway, for the record, to you, Senator, or I'm sorry, my brain's going back to the old days, Commissioner Sagerblum.
That's fine.
We took the language that's in this draft you have in front of you. When we worked on this initially for New Year's Eve, it was based on the policies that some events use for large gatherings, such as the NFL. I can't remember exactly. I think there is a jurisdiction in the Midwest somewhere that has this, but I'll have to research and verify it because I'm thinking back several years ago when we went through all this with our stakeholder partners. But I believe that a lot of what you see is policy that was taken, like, for example, from the NFL to limit potential hazardous materials coming into their sporting events where you have large people, a number of people gathered.
Yeah, and I can understand that, where you have the ability to control access and you have, metal detectors and you can go through bags and everything like that. What about a situation where somebody has a bag you don't like? Are you allowed to just take the bag and let the person go, or do you have to charge them with a crime?
No, sir. Again, first it's a misdemeanor offense. So if we saw someone that was in violation of the ordinance, and again, if this ordinance were passed, our hope would be that 99% of the people would comply with it, and then you'd have, instead of 500 people with backpacks, you'd have 1 or 2 show up. We give them a warning, hey, sir or ma'am, you can't have a backpack here. Give them an opportunity to take it back to their car or to take it back to their apartment or whatever. And then out of the 3 or 4 people that aren't in compliance, 3 of them obey and go take the backpack and put it away, or they comply with the law. And then you have 1 person left that's probably your problem maker that's got bricks or something in the bag. And then officers could, at that point, after the person's been given warning, take action, whether that's a citation or whether it's more appropriate to make an arrest. And then if arrest occurs, like in any arrest, if someone has personal property on them, that property would be impounded, and when they're released from the jail, they would get it back. Obviously, we're not giving bricks and Molotov cocktails back to people, but I hope that answers your question.
It does. And I would just echo Mr. Jones's comments. Just when you watch on TV and see guys with guns over their shoulder and things like that, it seems a little crazy to be focusing on backpacks. But I will say this, I've worked with you in the legislature. I know you understand the legislative process. you'd understand the players that are involved here. And so I would urge you to reach out to the Culinary, reach out to the ACLU, reach out to the universities. And if there is something we can do, I'd be happy to try to do that. But truthfully, this language is way beyond anything I could support.
I appreciate that, Commissioner, and as I've always done in the past, I'm more than willing to work with anyone on this to get it right. The goal is to get it right and make sure people are safe.
Thank you, Commissioner Sager-Bloom. Commissioner Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have some of the same concerns that have been expressed by others. Those of us that are attorneys have studied, in some cases, we have been right in the middle of some of these kinds of things over the course of our careers. And so there's work that yet needs to be done in order for the ordinance to work for me. And I'm pleased to note that we're going to work with others who have an interest in making sure that the outcome is the kind of thing that the community can be proud of, but most importantly, the outcome is something that helps us do a couple of things that have been really difficult this past week. People need the opportunity to be able to express themselves. They need the kinds of things available to them to enable them to be there and to be there for long hours. They need to be able to do it in an environment that is safe for them. We have a community that is freaking out too. People who are not out in the streets, people who, many of whom are, and maybe most of whom, are very supportive of the right to protest and shocked and disgusted with the events of the past week, but they're afraid for their own safety. I got a call the other evening advising me that a person was being asked to leave Walmart in Henderson on Lake Mead Drive because the protesters were headed there. Somebody had advised them that they were coming, and so they were closing and locking up. We had our anniversary, my wife and I, the other evening, and we were in a restaurant above the Las Vegas Boulevard, and we watched people come down the street from the Trump Hotel and turn south and proceed along Las Vegas Boulevard, and they were doing it all very safely, but there were quite a number of them, and there didn't seem to be any real issues. Later on in the evening, there were issues that developed. You've indicated to us that there are certain things that are policy at the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. And most notably, today we've talked about the educate, the warn, and then enforce. So as the department employees are out there, as our police officers are out in the field, what do we do in an active way? What does the department do in an active way to enforce its policy?
That's a great question, Commissioner. And first,
in real time.
Right.
In real time.
And first and foremost, it's leadership. I was in a meeting yesterday with the sheriff, and where he addressed our captains, our directors, and our lieutenants that are the boots on the ground out there in charge of these events. And they're the ones that are put in the unfortunate position where they have to make a critical decision in an instant. And for example, if the crowd is protesting and they're being somewhat peaceful, and then all of a sudden a rock flies and hits an officer, and by the way, over the weekend we had, I believe, close to 30 officers who were injured, some with broken bones because of rocks and things that were thrown. That commander out there has to make a decision. Does this warrant, given an order to disperse, does this warrant giving people the order that they need to leave the area, and if they refuse to comply, deploying other means such as tear gas or the pepper balls? And that falls on the leadership of our agency, and so that leader is held accountable. They have the autonomy to make those decisions right there on the spot, but they're also held accountable for those decisions. And I think that the leadership out there, if there's a squad out there that is going above and beyond what they should be doing, if they're being too aggressive or they're taking action which is not appropriate for the situation, that first-line leader out there is held accountable for that. And so that's number one. But you said on the front end, so that's the front end. On the back end, our officers train all year, mainly for events like New Year's Eve, but it applies to what we've seen over the weekend on our crowd control, protest procedures, constitutional law, all the things that apply to what we've seen over the weekend, so that officers are constantly trained on that. It's part of their yearly criteria for training, so that they know how to appropriately act in those situations. And to be quite honest with you, I said earlier that I worked during the Rodney King protests back in the early 90s. I remember being on the west side of town when unfortunately things were burning, and it was difficult for the fire department to get in and put out fires, and it was a horrible situation. But I can tell you what I've seen out there over the weekend is much more serious when it comes to the violence that we've seen. And if I was a young officer out there on a skirmish line with 5,000 people coming towards me, some of them throwing rocks and bottles, I think that would make you quite nervous. And I know Commissioner Kirkpatrick has come out and been out on the line with officers. Some others of you may that I'm not aware of, but I would encourage you to do that. I would encourage you to come to our operations center and see for yourself firsthand what's happening out there, and go out and stand out where those officers are and see what they're seeing from their perspective. I know some of you have done it on the protester side, and that is a great thing. But also please do it on the officer side.
And the conflict really is perspective, right? I mean, we have this, we all condemn the violence. Mm-hmm. And I haven't heard a thing spoken by a single police officer other than that, yes, that we condemn the violence. I haven't heard anyone suggest that that the police department has any intent or mission to unsettle a peaceful demonstration. No. And peaceful is interesting, right? I mean, it can be loud, sometimes it can be threatening, but that doesn't make it something that you can use deadly force against, right? The law still applies to all of that, and you're trained when it comes to use of force. And is use of force something on which the department trains regularly? It isn't like a box to be checked. Absolutely. Yep, got trained on use of force, and now I don't have to do that anymore?
Absolutely, Commissioner. Chuck Calloway again for the record. Not only is it something that we train regularly, quarterly throughout the year, every officer is required to get use of force training. In addition, it's required by state post, police officer standards and training. And last legislative session, Assemblyman Frierson, we worked very closely with him to put more training requirements in the law for officers when it comes to de-escalation, when it comes to bias-based policing and all those things, and we embrace that at Metro. And I will just say to the comment you made, Commissioner, the sheriff spoke out very soon in all of this about his concern about what happened in Minneapolis, and you are absolutely correct. I have not talked to one police officer that thinks what happened in Minneapolis is anything other than criminal and horrific. But for me, in this city that I love and I've lived in for over 32, 33 years, I'm frustrated because I know as an agency, going back to 2013, we participated in the collaborative reform process with the Department of Justice, with the COPS office. We had 75 recommendations from an independent body of how we could change our procedures to make sure that community is safe, that we better make stronger community relationships, and also that we protect people's lives. We were the first agency, I believe in 2013, the first major agency to put body cameras on our officers. We worked very closely with then Senate Majority Leader Aaron Ford, now Attorney General Ford, on that, and also Assemblyman Harvey Mumford. The sheriff has a multicultural advisory committee that he meets with regularly to talk about concerns in the community and to try to address those concerns. We just recently updated our use of force policy to address issues that were raised during the unfortunate case of Mr. Williams, where he told officers he could not breathe, and there wasn't initially enough action taken to make sure he was sit up and he was able to breathe. And so we changed our policy to require that if someone says, I cannot breathe, they're set up into a recovery position. Medical personnel are called immediately to address that, and we made changes there to our policy. We're one of the only agencies I know in the country that worked with stakeholders such as the ACLU on our use of force policy to include sanctity of life in our use of force policy. We have a very robust community engagement team that goes out regularly and works with our community leaders and our faith-based community. We have a Citizens Review Board. We have a Citizens Academy, a Hispanic Citizens Academy. We have a Minority Recruitment Council. We have our Police Athletic League, which works with youth in the community. I could go on and on. We have our recap program. We have Hope for Prisoners, which we work partnership with in our detention facility to reduce recidivism and get people skills they need to get jobs and reduce crime. Prior to this whole pandemic, we reduced crime significantly, in particular violent crime, in this community, and we didn't do it just Metro. We did it with community partners. And so it's very frustrating for me to see what's happening across the country and to see law enforcement being painted with a broad brush and seeing the violence occur here. I 100% support our protesters doing things peacefully, and no problem with that, but I don't want to see violence in our community, and we need to work to make that stop.
You mentioned bias-based policing. There was a reference earlier by someone, I think the term that was used was racist policing. And I want to make sure that I understand. So this whole notion of bias-based policing is something that is not just in word only something that we care about and we pay attention to.
Yes.
Now, I was born in Las Vegas, Nevada, just a few blocks from here. And I won't tell you how many years ago that was, but it was a long time ago. And a lot has changed in the years that I have lived in this community. A lot. And some of the things that my friends in school experienced then would never happen today. But that doesn't mean that we've arrived yet. And there are issues that occur to us, there are challenges that occur to us when people on either side feel threatened, whether it is a threat to my core, the things that I believe and that I stand up for on the one hand, and on the other hand, the potential for a threat to life or the lives that the police department are assigned and take on a duty and a responsibility to protect. All of that is in constant conflict every minute that we're seeing a demonstration, for instance. It is something that just happens. But it becomes so critical to us that we have real-time supervision, real-time accountability for the decisions that are made in the context of both use of force and bias-based policing.
Yes.
All of that has to be happening, the supervision, the education, the warning to the police officer, right? The enforcement against a police officer. All of that has to be happening in real time by those who are charged with the duty to supervise. And what I'm hearing you say is that is exactly the way that that Metro is grounded in the context of its active supervision during an incident. Am I overstating that, or is that?
And I'm not going to sit here, sir, and Chuck Calloway again for the record. I'm not going to tell you we're perfect, because we're far from perfect. And we can always make improvements, and we can always better ourselves as a police agency. And again, we'll work with any stakeholder out there to improve what we do, because at the end of the day, the safety of this community is what's the most important, and people won't come here if it's not safe, and we won't have a community. And what we see with COVID will be irrelevant if we'd have a community where people come here and they're victimized or they're victims of violent crime. And so that's our number one priority. We're definitely not perfect, and yes, you hit the nail on the head. Accountability on the front line, especially in these situations we've seen over the weekend where emotions run high and passion is out there and people are very passionate about these issues. And when you have certain small elements of folks that take advantage of that for their own personal reasons, whether it's to entice a fight or entice violence, or whether it's to burn a building or steal something from a pawn shop, that's unfortunate for all of us, for the peaceful protesters that are out there too. They're being painted with a broad brush. I saw yesterday when this was posted, I saw on social media where someone said, why are all the protesters being painted with a broad brush in this ordinance because of what a few have done with backpacks out there? And I agree. And cops are being painted with a broad brush out there too for the actions of people across this country. And we handle 3 million calls for service a year at Metro. We've got 5,000 or more employees on our department. and we're dealing with people all day long on calls. And yes, there's bad apples out there that unfortunately do things that they shouldn't do. The lady that came up here in the beginning of this meeting, I think quite eloquently said that police officers are human too. And people suffer from bad judgment sometimes. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're a horrible person, whether you're a protester or whether you're a cop. What's bad is when someone's life is lost because of it, whether you're a protester or a cop. And that's what we need to work together to resolve.
Well, I'm finished, but
Okay. I was going to say, let everybody else have a chance.
She was about to say, you have one more question. This collision of ideals is something that has got to be managed in a way that we can all be proud of. And the only way I think we get there is by having the consults with those who are others, stakeholders in the whole issue. And so that needs to be a really deep dive. I would be plenty happy to sit in on any of that, but at a minimum, I would want to know regularly what is happening. Where are these discussions going? What are we hearing?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Weekly.
Mr. Calloway, good morning, and thank you for being here today. I appreciate your presentation. I appreciate you coming before us to better explain what's being presented to the commission as well as to the public. I'm going to start out by just saying, since I've been in office, I've had an opportunity to work with you for years. Sir. And you definitely are a very stand-up guy. You really are. And one of the best things I heard today is the ability to work together. We heard a display of concerns from the public, and I think that many of those concerns were extremely valid. Absolutely. What you're standing before us talking about today is also very valid. You're here representing your agency, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, yes, sir. In which I don't believe anyone in this room will say that we are not 100% in support of public safety. For those of us sitting on this dais here, we run for office speaking on a platform of public safety because we want to ensure that everyone is protected and safe. But we're also here talking today, and when we look at this, and let me start over here. Let me go to this point here. We're dealing with, because we've gotten so far off the issue of talking about this ordinance here, but I just want to say.
Thank you. Mary Ann likes you getting back on topic.
What's being presented here today, we're also discussing a systemic issue that have plagued communities of color for decade after decade after decade. And I'm going to take it a little further and just not say communities of color, I'm going to say black community, since everyone wants to say Black Lives Matter, right? This is something that have affected the African American community, the black community, in disproportionate numbers that no one else can even remotely understand what it feels like. It's such a heavy weight to have to endure this. It's so painful, honestly. And each day as this whole situation have arisen again for folks to say, how are you doing? It's hard to say good, because I'm not good. And many of us are not good. We're spending hours talking to each other, trying to hold each other up, trying to help each other get through it. Commissioner Jones spoke of Atara Asabula. He's an attorney here. We all cried on the phone yesterday in tears, a bunch of men crying to see the video of him being thrown on the ground, and he has a bruise this large, purple and black, where pepper bullets hit him. He was standing on a curb waiting for his Lyft ride to go home. It's those type of things. When we talk about this whole backpack issue here, I so understand what you're saying, and this is your job, to make sure that we protect those men and women that are putting their lives out on the line for us. As the chairman of the board of UMC, we have a 29-year-old man laying there clinging to life, right? He may not go back home to see his family again. I don't think anyone in this room condones that and support that. I don't know if I misunderstood or heard what some gentleman stood up and said he signed up. Nobody signs up for that crap. Nobody. But Mr. Floyd's family didn't sign up for it either. Breonna Taylor's family didn't sign up for it either. Ahmaud Arbery's family didn't sign up for it either. It's this type of stuff. And so you said something that I so appreciate. You're willing to work with everyone. And I'm glad that the chairwoman is going to continue this, because it sounds like we're going to have an opportunity, Mr. Calloway, to bring some folks to the table. Some of my amazing students from UNLV who was here, former master's student here in the PUA department, thank you so much for being here and sharing your concerns. It's citizens like that. Culinary, higher ed. Thank you, Michael Flores, for being here today. New Era Group, the NAACP. I saw the Sheriff's Minority Committee. I can't think of the correct title.
Multicultural
The
Advisory
Multicultural Committee spoke at a press conference. The chairwoman and I were talking about it yesterday. To see Dora LeGrand, who was able to just recite just some of the things from the de-escalation process to the whole recovery position, and just some of the things that your department have incorporated. I just think that here in Southern Nevada and Clark County, we have an opportunity to be a model for the state. And talking to commissioners across the state, they're saying, wow, you guys really are doing some good stuff, from community policing to the whole 9 yards. But there's also still some other underneath the skin type issues. There are some blatant issues that really need to be addressed. And so for us to talk about this whole backpack thing and purses and all of that's a discussion that needs to be had, because what we don't want to do, we don't want to disenfranchise folks. We don't want to put folks in a position of more discrimination. And because, see, I'm one, I rock a backpack every day. Every day I carry a backpack. I wish that I had money, I'd start my own backpack line. How about that? Being so blessed to have served in the leadership capacity at the Conventions Authority, which markets to millions around the world. We spent millions, and under the leadership of our chairman, our president of our board now, Larry Brown, which I'm sure you'll hear from momentarily, we spend millions promoting, especially our New Year's Eve party. When this ordinance first came about, and we all talked about how to make sure that people come to Las Vegas, because it was my vision. I want our New Year's Eve to be bigger than New York's. And so I'm pushing, and Commissioner Brown, who continues to support, us getting bigger and better. We want people to come on that boulevard and feel safe. We don't want folks tearing up our resorts. We don't want folks hurting each other. We want folks to have a great time. And so how we introduced that and said we don't want any glass materials on that boulevard. We don't want backpacks, where you got folks who are sprinkled in with the good folks. And that's what we're seeing here with these demonstrations. You got a bunch of people who are out here peacefully demonstrating, who are exercising their First Amendment rights, who are speaking up on behalf of what's right for all Americans. But you got some clowns out there who are making it bad. And so I understand, I don't think we're too far off, Mr. Calloway, in what we're saying. I just think everybody wants to be able to be heard and to feel like, hey, we're not putting something else in place that's going to continue to hurt, disenfranchise, and discriminate. We're not too far off. And so I'm glad we're going to continue this one, and I hope that whomever is going to pull this together, hopefully we can have a discussion and we can be able to do it in a way where we can social distance. But I'd like to, with your permission, I want to bring some community people, and I don't want y'all to do it with the same old folks who think that they can sit at a table and make a decision and think that they can speak on behalf of what they believe what is right for everybody. Make sure we have some folks who are not popular. Make sure that we have some folks who are not the everyday same old people. And I think at the end of the day, we're going to come up with a great solution that's going to be good for all of us.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your work, Mr. Calloway. Thank you, sir.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioner Weekly. Commissioner Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Commissioner Weekly. You always put things in perspective extremely well. First off, thanks to the bike rider that came down today. I passed you, I think, on Alta under the bridge, and you were in your lane, and everybody was doing the right thing. So thanks for making the effort to come down. I think you had a basket out front that you put your little purse in. Yeah, that was you. That was you. And I would ask those that spoke to stay engaged. Words are fine. You come down here, you're upset with the ordinance, and are opposed to certainly the intent, but don't stop there. Take advantage of Mr. Calloway and Metro's invitation to engage in the conversation. Because I don't think we're in disagreement of what we all want, and that's certainly protect our First Amendment rights and be safe. So engage, stay engaged, and especially to the majority of the speakers today, they were spot on with good, positive comments, whether they're critical of what we're proposing or in support. I was very pleased to hear the language and what you had to say, with the exception of a couple. And that the speakers that come in here in a public forum, and they certainly have the right to, but what scares me is the ignorance. And some of the comments made on the public record today are just ignorant. And that ignorance to Metro, to this commission, to the society, to First Amendment rights, that's dangerous. So, unfortunately, the majority of you spoke factually and truthfully and from the heart. But be careful as far as the ignorance out there, not only towards this commission or to Metro, but to the community at large. Lawrence, you said, named some people that matter, and they didn't ask to be in this situation. Well, Shay Michelonis didn't ask to be in this situation. And somewhere, and I don't know who's to blame, it's certainly not the peaceful protesters or those that came down, and it's certainly not Metro for their intent to protect our community, protesters and people alike, property. But how do we justify Shay Michelonis? And that ignorance, when people come here and talk about police brutality across the world, and this kid is lying in a hospital bed fighting for his life. Metro. Now, I've been fortunate for over 20 years to be engaged with Metro in their fiscal affairs. And Chuck, you touched on some of it, but I would encourage, especially those in leadership positions that showed up today, to learn about Metro, and especially what Metro has gone through in the last decade as far as transitioning from police tactics to engagement to the community to, as an aside, they're not perfect. Mr. Calloway has mentioned that numerous times today. They're not perfect, they're human, they're men and women just like us. They have families, but they've done so much. Chuck, I forget, what was the federal oversight that came in and did that major report and asked us to, Metro, to meet 30 or so, I don't even, speak to that just for a moment.
Yes, sir. It was, I believe it was around 2013, between 2011 and 2013, the RJ did a comprehensive article about use of force here in the Valley with our agency, Metro, and to be quite honest with you, it was unacceptable and it looked bad. And we were on the verge of the Department of Justice coming in and basically putting a consent decree on our agency, and at the time, Sheriff Gillespie took an initiative that has never been done in the country, and he reached out to the COPS office and the Department of Justice and said, rather than you guys just come in and put a consent decree on us, how about we work together and fix this? And so we engaged in a collaborative reform model. That model is now actually considered a model to be used across the country. There's other departments that have looked at it and have engaged in it as well. Basically, an independent body came in and worked with our agency, and then ultimately they gave 75 recommendations of how we could reduce use of force, how we could better engage the community, build partnerships, and that report is on the internet. It can be found easily with just a Google search of Las Vegas Metro Collaborative Reform Model. I think it's on our website as well, lvmpd.com. And we accomplished, I believe, all 75. There may have been one recommendation that we didn't accomplish, and that was something that was out of our control. It was a recommendation to the DA's office or something that we had no control over that. But I believe we, for the most part, accomplished every recommendation in that report, if my memory serves me correctly. And part of those recommendations resulted in some of those things that I talked about, like our community engagement team, that's their sole job, to go out and work with our community and build ties between law enforcement and the community. And I'll say this, and I'll shut up because we've been here a long time, Madam Chair, and I appreciate I've gone way over my 3 minutes. But the one thing that I think's important is, I'm sorry, when I said that I lost my train of thought. But anyway,
Chuck, let me help you out. I just want to encourage, Metro's many things, but one thing they do as well as any police agency in this country is they listen, they engage. And unless people take advantage of that, then it's on them. It's not on Metro. We have a couple of colleagues, colleague to my right is going to keep Metro, is going to challenge Metro to be doing the right thing, and that's healthy.
That's good.
As the leadership at UNLV and the regents and everyone else, they should challenge Metro to make sure they're doing everything they can to be the best police department. And when you strip it all away, I've said this 1,000 times, and I'll say it before I leave here again, public safety is what we're all about. It's what differentiates us from anywhere in the world. Our safety at UNLV, as a student, as a professor, in their homes, in their community, and when they're shopping in their churches. That's what Metro is. It's our backstop. It's our public safety.
And I remembered what I was going to say, Commissioner.
99.9% of those officers, men and women, do a phenomenal job. And Metro should not be faulted at all. We as a community should support Metro, and if we have concerns with Metro, engage with Metro. Thanks, Madam Chair.
The only thing I was going to say that I'd lost my train of thought on was, I would close with this, is that I challenge the commission and the public to show me a law enforcement agency in this country that is more transparent when it comes to use of force than Metro. And I will back that up by the fact that part of that collaborative reform model was the fact that we do a 72-hour press conference after every use of force incident. We release body camera to the public. We were doing that back when other agencies were saying, you can't do this, it's going to jeopardize the case, it's going to jeopardize either a prosecution of the suspect or a prosecution of an officer or whatnot, and we release that body camera footage to the public. We hold a press conference, and we've done that consistently over the years. I believe we still post the outcome of use of force incidences, and we release an annual report on that that's available to the public. And so, again, you find an agency out there that's doing more than us when it comes to that, please let me know so we can adopt what they're doing. And I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Calloway, and I'm going to ask that for folks that want to be part of a working group to fill out a card and acknowledge that you would like to be part of a working group and going forward. So what I'd like to do is continue this to the regular scheduled board meeting. And at this time, I could take a second public comment, or do I need a motion from the board to do that, Marianne?
This meeting.
So if I I want to.
You want to continue this hearing until
The next scheduled meeting.
do it then? That would be June 16th.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the board should do at this point.
Okay, let's make a motion. So I need a motion to continue this, or just to.
As the chairman, you can do that.
So everybody's comfortable with working through this
Question.
and rehearing. Commissioner Weekly.
Madam Chair, for those who are not here that are interested in being a part of the working group, how would they be able to still engage?
So Juan, you can reach out to your commissioner, or you can call my office at, poor Gina, 702-455-3504, and we'll make sure that there's plenty of comment opportunities and plenty of collaboration. I took many calls this morning, and so we want to work together, but and we want to address this for the long term, okay? Okay, so that's continued.
At this point, you could take the closing public comment if you're ready.
Okay, so at this time, I'm going to start with the folks on the phone. So if you have any new information I'll go ahead and open the public comment. If you have any new information, go ahead.
Callers, if you're on the phone and you do want to provide comment, please press *9.
Okay, we will unmute you one at a time, so please say your name for the record. Anybody wishing to speak?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. My name's Brittany Sheehan. I appreciate a lot of the comments, and I appreciate Metro and what the aim of this ordinance is. I just don't support the ordinance because we have Fourth Amendment rights. We have other rights that need to be considered. There's nothing criminal about a water bottle. It's a necessity. We live in Las Vegas. And it's a slippery slope to make these procedures for everybody concerning the First Amendment. So, yeah, I can't support that. I don't think that we should just start going down this path. And, like, the Strip is private property anyway. So this county ordinance is a little bizarre to me because they don't have to open up the Strip for protests. As far as I know, it's private property. So, I mean, I don't think that this is the answer, but I understand what you're seeking. And I'm a conservative. I'm not super stoked on what I've been seeing with these riots and violence and property damage. I just don't like other rights being compromised to solve the problem. So that's my comment today. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? The second person is unmuted. Okay, go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Carmela Gabson. I live in unincorporated Clark County, testifying against Agenda Item 3. And this just comes down to public safety and the fact that people are going to continue to go out there until they see that our leaders are stepping up to adequately address racism in our system. We need you to step up and implement widespread, sweeping, systemic change in the way that Black people are policed in this county. Nothing else is going to stop people from going out there. There are young kids who are so heartbroken over all of the violence in our community, and they don't know what else to do. What they're carrying in their backpacks are things to help themselves if they are hurt. They're carrying PPE and hand sanitizer because we're living during a pandemic. They're carrying water because it's hot. They're carrying tear gas and first aid kits because they are being met with brutal police force and violence from other people who are coming to attack them. Our solutions have nothing to do with First Amendment rights, to the ability to safely practice your First Amendment rights. The only solutions are going to be if you all step up and do your part to implement changes in the way that these communities are policed and nothing else. And we don't want anyone to be hurt. People don't want anyone to die. We don't want violence in our communities. But if we're going to do something, it's not going to be done focusing on the way that people speak their minds. They don't know what else to do. They're heartbroken. We need you to step up, please.
Thank you. Okay, next person.
Hello, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Ingrid Lopez. I understand the intent of this proposal, that it's safety, but this is not the way to do it for the following reasons. We live in what is known as the free world, and we live in a city in this free world that is a 24-hour city. People bring their kids, they carry diapers and other necessities in their backpacks. Are mothers going to be targeted as well? Protesters carry water and first aid kits. Students who want to protest carry books and other school materials because they don't have any other place to deposit these items. This is an open carry state. If you want to take a stand against this, take a stand against guns that actually harm people rather than backpacks.
This ordinance is a slippery slope and goes against our constitutional values. Also, are officers going to carry rulers to measure backpacks? What happens if the backpack is a couple of centimeters bigger than the backpack allowed? This is ridiculous. This is not about being a Democrat or a Republican. A misdemeanor is a cruel and unusual punishment for carrying a backpack no matter the size. This is about protecting the rights of everyone in our city. I urge you to vote no on this ridiculous ordinance. It's not about being a Democrat or Republican. If this is passed, I don't believe there is a court in this country that would agree with this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just want to clarify something before you open up the next public comment. One, this is being continued, so we're willing to have a further dialogue. So understand as you're saying your public comment, this is being continued. Two, this is specifically about a protest ordinance. So if you could keep your comments to that, that would be super helpful. So the next person. Can you also push *9 when you're finished speaking? Is that what you said? Okay. Okay. Okay, you're unmuted, so
Hello.
Go ahead and speak.
My name's Gabrielle Amato Bailey. I'm calling to say that this ordinance is completely misguided. Restricting protesters from carrying bags is completely unacceptable. It's not only going to function as a deterrent for people to exercise their First Amendment rights, it's going to actively endanger the health and safety of protesters. These protests are happening for hours at a time in the Las Vegas summer heat. Protesters need to be able to carry water and cold packs. These protests are happening amid a global pandemic. Protesters need to be able to carry personal protective equipment. They need to be able to carry food, and they need to be able to carry first aid supplies to administer emergency care to each other when officers become violent with them. And officers have become violent with protesters. It is as true in our community as it is all over the country. If you want to see less violence at these protests, if you are worried about people attacking police officers or smashing windows or setting fires, then work with the FBI to identify white supremacist hate groups in our community, because we have seen evidence from all over the country that it is white supremacists who are acting as provocateurs for the explicit purpose of drawing police violence down on peaceful protesters. If you want to protect public safety, then you need to focus on that. And I'm just going to say one other thing, because I know that we're short for time. This isn't just a matter of people having passionate feelings. I keep hearing that as like a nice way to talk about what's happening. This isn't just passionate feelings. This is a life and death struggle. This is a matter of life and death every single day for Black people in our community and around the country. Black lives matter. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. And so I'm going to say one more time to the public comment, if you could keep it to the protest, we are going to continue it. We'd like to work with many folks. So if you could keep it to the protest comments. Specifically, it will help us address your issues, and if you just don't like it, that's good too, but please, we understand everything else that's going on. So go ahead. Next person.
Hello, my name is Anastasia MacReg. I apologize, I missed the representative's name from Metro. He was saying that accountability is a huge part of keeping peace in our city. And over the last week, we've seen videos of officers grabbing passerbys from behind and dragging them on the ground to be detained. We've seen officers aggressively grabbing journalists and photographers who are causing no disruption and to be arrested. And I would like to know, if we are combating bias-based policing with accountability, where is the accountability for these officers right now? Protesters need backpacks to carry protective gear because they feel unsafe, because it looks like so far there has been no accountability. So I would challenge that we find answers to these questions before this ordinance is passed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next person, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Amber Mora, and as a member of the community, I really feel like passing this ordinance would affect a lot of people greatly, because, like myself, for example, I'm pre-diabetic. I need to be able to have food on me. I need to be able to have water sometimes. I need to have PPE and again, it's like, it feels that this ordinance isn't really helping people. Like, I understand the concerns with rocks and supposed frozen water bottles, but in the grand scheme of things, it seems like a small 1% that seems to be large. Now, obviously, I know this is still in the works, but I feel like if this is still going to have to pass, because obviously I'm not able to vote on it, I feel like maybe a compromise can be had, whereas like clear backpacks like we do with the airport or something, because like, again, I feel like this is just detrimental to people's right to protest, it's deterring people from protesting, and more or less like how are you supposed, like how would an officer enforce it? How would, like, are they going to stop, like how would you stop bias from who's going to get stopped? Like how are they going to be able to tell, like I just foresee a lot more bias being used against non-white protesters personally, based off things I've seen on social medias and videos. And like the previous commenter said, there is a lack of accountability in the police force in Metro.
Okay, and okay, is that all you
I'm
have?
done with comment.
Okay, thank you. Next person, please.
Yes, this is Oliver Sebald. I'm a local attorney here, and I had spoken earlier, and I listened closely specifically to the commissioner's comments, and I wanted to reply to two of them. I really appreciate the comment regarding community engagement versus enforcement. On police card, it says, I believe something like cooperation or something before enforcement. And I think we need to keep that aria in our town. I think it's very important. I also think as I looked at this, I think words like insinuation of ignorance at a public administrative hearing is not germane, nor the proper decorum. I think that's inciting. And I also believe that when you look at this ordinance and you read the plain language, you see a who's who of different jurisprudence cases in free speech where ordinances have been shot down. This is vague and ambiguous. There's parts of it that I don't even know that I could define. And I'm very concerned about that. And I also think that, once again, circling back, I'd like to say that the commissioner who noted about a community engagement has the right tone for our town, not the gentleman who's insinuating people are participating in the public process are ignorant. Thank you.
Thank you. So here, let me, and Marianne, I just want to clarify. So we, because we've never done the phone situation, now the calls are coming in faster because people are calling someone to call in, so we can't stay on top of it. So do I have permission, is it legal to cut off the calls at some point and allow them to send emails or to call my office and then go with the folks in the public?
Or you can cut them off now because this is the time they should have been here, but also remind them that this hearing's not closed, it's continued, and they'll have another opportunity to be heard down the road.
Okay, is the rest of the board comfortable with, I'm not trying to not hear them today, but I asked for new information and we can't keep up with the phone calls. So let's do the last 4 phone calls. And then we'll read that into record, and then Christian will let you speak. So, okay? Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Justin Burnett. I've lived in Vegas for 10 years. I can basically see the panel in my head right now, and I can just hear the lack of diversity and the lack of genuine shifting your tone. I think what the prior callers were trying to express is that maybe de-escalation needs to be more in the forefront instead of worrying about what's going to happen if the protesters get out of control, or the rioters, as I should say. As a police force and as Las Vegas, we know how to handle huge crowds. You guys have done it great since we started the city. You know how to handle huge crowds, and I think you need to look at that, de-escalate before you start taking people's backpacks away in the middle of summer, which is inhumane. And you all know that. You guys have lived in Vegas. You're going to take your backpacks away in waters in the middle of summer? Get out of here. Just use common sense. Don't be knuckleheads. Thanks for your time. Have a good day.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hey, my name is Jacob Carson. I've been a resident here for all of my life. I just want to make a quick comment regarding the cargo pants that one of the commissioners said could serve as a substitute for backpacks. I'm not sure how you can fit first aid kits, snacks, gallons of water in your cargo pants and still be able to walk around. At the end of the day, backpacks are mostly used for good in these protests. People are out here. It's very hot. I'm sure many of you have lived here for a long time. It's not possible to be out here for hours and hours at a time, walking in big groups without water and other sustenance. I do not believe that banning backpacks is the way to do it here, and I appreciate continuing this hearing because it seems kind of thrown together, no comment from many public groups. And I just hope that the later, but I don't know what you would say, like the wording will be improved. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi, so my name is Ashley Davis. Thank you so much for taking my call. I've listened, and from being someone like where I work in the hospital, and when you are in a position to help and serve people, you are held at a higher standard. I do not condone violence, and nor do I condone violence of police brutality. What I think happened to that officer is horrific. He should not have been shot. But what people aren't realizing is that when somebody of a higher standard has committed a crime, they are not held accountable for their actions. People are dying at the hands of officers when the situation is not a high-profile situation. And I'm talking about when they are handcuffed, when you have detained them, these people are still dying. Why? Why are they still dying? The officer has not been shot at. Nobody has shot at the officer. Nobody has assaulted the officer. But people are still dying. That is a problem. And what people don't understand, and I think is very important, is that people have a big concern about racism. They have a big concern about, the thing is that law and legislation does not change racism because you can't change how somebody feels. In order to change and fix a problem on racism, is you have to remove the people who are racist and put in the people who are not racist and who not. And one thing I do want to comment on that was said during your meetings that, you know, there are times where people get confused about their policies. As someone who works in the hospital, if we are confused about a policy, we have to go back and understand what it is, because if you are confused and don't know about your policy, then you do not need to be doing your job until you know what you need to be doing and understand your policy. And that is the problem. The problem is accountability. If a civilian commits a crime, we hold them accountable. If somebody in a high position, whether it's a police officer, government official, a doctor, I don't care. If you commit a crime, even if you have body cam footage and you know a crime has been committed, hold them accountable. By making other restrictions about backpacks, I carry a backpack every day to work. I have my lunch in there, I have my money in there, and using those different, like, that's not a solution to, you know, rioting and protest, because obviously rioting is wrong. Loot is wrong. It is.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Appreciate it. Is that the end of our phone? We have one more person. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for holding this meeting. My name is Ender Austin III, and I'm actually one of your constituents, Chairwoman Kirkpatrick. I attended an event on this week, and unfortunately, we faced some, in my opinion, disproportionate force to standing and singing. And I think some people already mentioned, a friend of mine who was present. The challenge that I have with this particular ordinance is that there was talk about there being a warning first and then talking to folks. We had absolutely no warning. There were just a melee of, I was told I thought there were bullets. I was told later there were beanbags fired at us. And it seems as though, and this has been stated, but I do want to add for emphasis, it seems as though this is something that can be used and weaponized, and unfortunately laws do not always go to a force, are enforced proportionately. This seems like something that can absolutely be used disproportionately and largely against people of color. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to limit the time on this end to 1 minute. The agenda allows me to do that. So, but Christian, I know that you haven't spoken at all, so come on.
Thank you so much, Commissioners, for allowing me to speak. My name is Christian Gerlach. I live in North Las Vegas. Larry Lawrence Weekly is my county commissioner. I appreciate you coming together to try to address this issue, but I actually want to echo Ender Austin's comments here. Unfortunately, this does afford for unequal enforcement of the law. In these demonstrations, there are people of color that could be unequally targeted, but I'm here speaking as an individual, but in a professional capacity, I often put together events, rallies, protests, and it does worry me, this language, because similar items capable of carrying prohibited items is rather vague. I have to carry carts in with different things. Sometimes at my events, there's Native Americans that carry hand drums, other musical instruments, cultural, religious, ceremonial artifacts, and those could be subject to search and seizure, mishandling, or misrepresentation with this kind of language. So I appreciate the time. Thank you for trying to address these troubling times, Commissioners.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Riley Taylor. I spoke earlier, and I just wanted to start out by thanking you all for taking the time to listen to us and really reconsider this ordinance. But I also want to let you all know that the Las Vegas City Council just passed a very similar ordinance that'll ban backpacks and carts at protests in the city of Las Vegas, and to urge you to talk to those council members and reach out and use your position to help us advocate for safety and for better conditions in protesting. I also wanted to address the comment made by the police representatives that these pepper bullets are just a sting. They're not. People are getting hit in the head, in the face, in the chest with them, and they're leaving huge welts and bruises. They're dangerous. It's not something as simple as a warning shot. Thank you.
Thank you. We have hand wipes there, so you're good. You could wipe it off, and they're right there in that little tub.
All right. Good morning, Chairwoman, and Marilyn Kirkpatrick, and Commissioners. Well, my name is Timothy Eliato, and I am speaking in terms of, I just wanted to address the, for the fact that we are disabling basically medical patients. They're denying their just the basic rights to carry medical supplies. I think based on that specific need alone, this needs to be readdressed. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Okay, last public comment speaker.
Hello again. Thank you, Commissioners, for allowing me to speak. My name is Christian Robles, and I'd like to also add that I'm also a UNLV student. I just want to address some comments and some alternatives to saying what we could do with the supplies we're not afforded to in our backpack because they're smaller now. Having, for example, medical supplies, you said there's EMTs on site, but having to walk towards a line of fire, potentially where our injuries are sustained from, isn't really reasonable for the protesters. Also, being told to walk your backpack back once you were given a warning, if that's what you were allowed just assuming you weren't arrested on spot. The protests go miles and miles from where you originally parked sometimes, and it just doesn't make any sense to have to walk all the way back to my car. And also for what someone said earlier about having to carry food if you're pre-diabetic, or even if you're diabetic and you need EpiPens, it's like you have to choose your real estate in your backpack, and it just doesn't make sense with this ordinance to prevent people from choosing what they need in order to stay alive and healthy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that concludes our public comment. Oh, Ms. King, you want to read the 2 emails?
Actually, I have a few emails. However, I will only read the comments that are related to the ordinance. Aubrey Farmer, Alexander Palafox, Tierras Stokes have all written the exact same comments, and they are opposed to this item for public safety during a time when public safety is the biggest priority. A backpack is necessary to carry PPE and hand sanitizer for protection against the spread of COVID-19. A backpack is necessary to carry water in hot temperatures. A backpack is necessary to carry milk to remove tear gas and first aid kits to treat rubber bullets injuries when protesters are met with aggressive police force and even violence from people who have come to protest to attack peaceful violators. I have a comment from Tia Jenkins. She is opposed to item 3. Comment from Holly Ramello. I'm writing to share my opposition of agenda item number 3. For the safety of Nevada, it is imperative that protesters are allowed to carry backpacks and other bags, strollers, carts to store necessary health items such as PPE, hand sanitizer, water, sunscreen, and more. This item, if passed, would put Nevadans in further danger of COVID-19 spike, whether it be from not having essential items or for being arrested and put in jail cell for that is a hotbed for a virus. Please do not pass this item. I encourage you to take the time to research and identify more effective ways to ensure the safety of all Nevadans, including protesters. This comment is from Penny James. The hypocrisy is stunning that when thousands of white people walked this country fully armed and dangerous and nothing was done. Peaceful people need their backpacks and medicine for water. Leave backpacks alone. Commissioners, the last item our comment is from Deanna Thompson. I am emailing to voice my opposition against agenda item number 3. Those are all the comments.
All right, thank you. So this closes this portion of the agenda?
It closes this portion of the agenda, and you will recess to the start of your zoning agenda.
So we'll go ahead and recess until the start of the zoning, and we're just going to take a quick 5-minute break. You all, so 7-minute break? 7-minute break it is. I'm in. I was trying to compromise today. So, okay, we are in recess for 7 minutes until our next portion of the meeting.